Okay, imagine this. You need a job description drafted, like right now.
Right.
And poof, your AI assistant does a basic version before you've even finished your coffee.
Huh, yeah. It feels like things are moving that fast. It's April 2025, and it's not just ChatGPT making waves anymore. Google's Gemini is seriously quick.
Exactly. So today we're diving deep into some recent analyses, like head-to-head comparisons from this month, looking at Gemini versus ChatGPT. We want to figure out what each one really offers right now.
Right. We're digging into what makes Gemini tick, especially how it plugs into all the Google stuff, Docs, Sheets, Drive, you name it, and, how that stacks up against ChatGPT for everyday tasks.
The goal here. By the end of this, you should have a really clear picture of Gemini's strengths, especially that Google integration and where it maybe differs from ChatGPT in practice.
Hopefully helping you figure out which one might be more useful for what you need.
Okay, let's jump right in. There was this initial test, right? Gemini, the 2.0 Flash model versus probably GPT-4o from OpenAI. The task was pretty standard. Act like a recruitment expert for a small real estate business, maybe 15 people, and draft an operational profile. What was the first big takeaway?
Speed. Just raw speed. Gemini spat out a response way, way faster than ChatGPT in that specific test.
Wow, okay. So if you need something fast, Gemini's got the edge there.
Seems like it, yeah. For quick drafts or brainstorming, that speed could be a huge plus.
But was the faster response as good? The analysis mentioned something about presentation.
That's the trade-off, potentially. ChatGPT, while Slayer, its first attempt apparently looked a bit better presented, maybe slightly more detailed right off the bat.
So speed versus polish, maybe?
Kind of, but you have to consider Gemini's response was still pretty decent quality, and often you get that speed on the free tier. That's pretty compelling, Quick and free for a solid first pass.
Okay, speed is one thing, but let's talk about what makes Gemini, that Google ecosystem integration. Let's start with this Canvas feature. What is that?
Right, Canvas. It's different from just a chat window. Think of it more like an interactive whiteboard or workspace.
Okay.
So you could throw a complex problem at it. The example used was a small furniture business wanting to double sofa sales, delegate half their operations, and launch a subscription service.
That's a lot for one prompt. How did Canvas handle it?
Again, super fast response, similar to what you might see from Mistral or Claude in terms of speed. But the layout is key.
How so?
You get the main response on the right side, but on the left, Gemini starts suggesting related ideas. Things like sustainability angles, personalization options, maybe tech integrations. It's like it's trying to brainstorm with you, not just answer the question.
So it prompts further thinking. And you mentioned Google Docs.
Exactly. That's a huge part of the appeal. You can just shunt that whole Canvas session straight into a Google Doc. Super smooth.
That sounds incredibly useful if you live in Google Workspace.
Totally. And it's not just Docs, Sheets, Drive. They're all tied in, even on the free plan. Paid plans give you more, fewer limits and this deep research thing we can talk about. But that core integration is, I think, Gemini's main strength for Google users.
Okay, let's dig into that integration more. I heard it can even, generate basic web apps.
Yeah, it can. You give it a prompt, say, present my new subscription product, and it can whip up the basic code for a simple web application pretty much instantly.
Wow. Is that unique?
Well, ChatGPT and Claude can do similar things, generating code, but Gemini's advantage here is that direct line to Google Drive. You can easily pull in your product photos or other files you already have stored there. It makes it a bit quicker to flesh out.
And Sheets integration too, not just exporting to Sheets, but working within Sheets.
Right. You can be in a Google Sheet and ask Gemini to, say, generate a table of fake furniture sales data.
Okay, fills the sheet for you.
Yeah. But then you can ask it questions about that data right there in the sheet, like calculate the total items sold but don't include sofas, and it'll do the math right there.
Okay, that's genuinely useful. No exporting and re-importing.
Exactly. Keeps you in the workflow.
So speed, deep integration. Now, you mentioned deep research. Sounds serious. What's that about?
It is pretty powerful. It uses Google search, obviously, but it's more structured. You give it a research topic, like create a detailed report on major trends in AI agents in 2025 for beginners. Before it even starts searching, Gemini proposes a research plan.
A plan? Like, I'll look into these areas.
Yeah, basically. And you can tweak that plan before it runs, say, focus more on this, or don't worry about that. Gives you more control.
That sounds much better than just getting a list of links. What do the results look like?
You get a proper report, and the crucial bit is everything is sourced. It links back to where it found the information. Adds credibility.
Nice. And can you use that report easily?
Yep, you can export the whole thing directly to Google Sheets. Handy for analysis or sharing.
How much does it search?
It varies. The example mentioned, it looked at maybe 35 websites, but sometimes it can scan hundreds. But it's smart enough to filter and only include the relevant sources in the final report.
And does it explain itself?
It does. At the end, it gives you a breakdown of its reasoning, like how it arrived at the conclusions in the report. Pretty transparent.
Okay, that's quite impressive. Feels like a proper research assistant. Now, what about this Google AI Studio you mentioned? The experimental stuff.
Right, AI Studio. Think of it as Google's lab, where they let you play with the really cutting edge, maybe not quite ready for primetime features.
Like fun, like what, image stuff?
Yeah, they're doing image generation, though the examples tested weren't mind-blowing apparently. But the modification tools were interesting.
Modifying images. How?
You could select a phone in a picture and ask Gemini to replace it with an apple. Or change someone's expression, make them look scared, for instance.
Whoa. Did it work well?
The object replacement and expression changes seemed pretty decent. Changing the background was apparently less successful in the test. But the speed was notable, like 4 to 6 seconds for a modification.
Still fast.
Yeah.
What else is cooking in AI Studio?
YouTube video summaries. You just paste a YouTube link.
Oh, that would be useful.
And it spits out a summary. The test used a video about scaling a business with AI agents, and the summary apparently hit all the key steps accurately. Big time saver potential there.
Definitely. Anything else that stood out? You sounded quite keen on one feature earlier.
Yes, the Scream real-time feature. Honestly, this felt like the most potentially game-changing thing in AI Studio.
Stream real time, what does it do?
You share your screen with Gemini live, and you can talk to it. It watches what you're doing and gives you guidance step by step in real time.
Seriously? Like it watches you use software and tells you what buttons to click?
Pretty much. The example was using N8N, which is a tool for building AI agents. Gemini could see the screen and, based on voice prompts, guide the user through the process live.
Wow. That's like having an expert looking over your shoulder. Huge potential for learning or troubleshooting.
Exactly. It feels like a real glimpse into the future of interactive assistants.
Okay, so that's the experimental edge. What about the paid version, Gemini Advanced? Is it just faster models?
It gives you access to more powerful models, yeah. Like 1.5 Pro, which has this massive context window. It can supposedly process huge amounts of data at once, like 50,000 lines of code.
Can it really understand that much code effectively?
Well, how effectively it uses that giant window is still being tested and debated, But the capability is there for handling really large inputs, which could be useful for certain complex tasks.
Gotcha. And one last crucial point. Privacy. How does Gemini handle user data?
It gives you options. You can let Google save your activity, which means they can access it, or you can turn off activity saving.
But there's a catch.
Yeah, the trade-off is if you turn off activity saving, you also lose your chat history. So it's privacy versus the convenience of having your past conversations saved. You have to choose.
Right, that's a common dilemma. Okay, let's try and wrap this up then. As of April 2025, what's the big picture on Gemini?
I'd say the key things are that impressive speed we saw, and crucially, the super tight integration with the whole Google suite. If you're already living in Google Docs, Sheets, Drive, Meet, Gmail, Gemini fits in really smoothly.
Makes sense. It plays to Google's strengths.
Definitely. ChatGPT is still obviously a major player, very versatile. But Gemini's unique angles, canvas, the way it embeds in apps, deep research, and especially those real-time experiments in AI Studio, they offer something different. It feels very focused on workflow integration.
So looking ahead, with development moving so fast, where does this go? It makes you wonder how these assistants will get even more integrated, beyond just answering questions or writing text.
Yeah, what new things will become essential? Will they start anticipating what we need? It's moving incredibly quickly. The next 6 months could bring features we haven't even thought of yet.
It's fascinating and maybe a little daunting to think about. What capabilities will we rely on next year or the year after?
That's the big question, isn't it? The potential is enormous.
Well, that's all the time we have for this deep dive. You've been listening to the podcast de Philippe.
And hey, if you found this useful, we'd love your support. Help us get to 1,000 subscribers.